Did Pam Bondi just expose her real agenda in Congress? That was the question dominating the confirmation hearing, as senators pressed her on whether she would protect the Department of Justice from political abuse or bend it to partisan loyalty. What unfolded was not a simple exchange of routine questions but a high-stakes clash over the future of American justice, a tug-of-war between assurances of independence and echoes of grievances that had shaped years of controversy. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse opened the confrontation with deliberate precision. Calm but intent on digging beneath Bondi's carefully polished responses, he asked if she had ever maintained an enemies list during her long career as a prosecutor or as Florida's Attorney General.
Force an enemies list that he announced publicly on television.
Oh, Senator, I'm sorry. There will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
Thank you. The FBI's, what is the FBI's role in national security and counterterrorism, and how important is that role?
You know, Senator, I believe now more than ever, counterterrorism is so important and vital in our country. We are facing such incredible threats here and abroad. I'm sure many of you saw former FBI Director Wray's interview on 60 Minutes. He talked about the threats that, frankly, again, I don't have my security clearance, but the threats facing us, Senator, from China right now that are so great. Given the sleeper cells within our country.
Given that importance, is it responsible to call for shutting down the FBI's counterterrorism and national security work? And will you, as Attorney General, impede or shut down the FBI's counterterrorism and national security work?
Senator,
2 questions.
Senator, I believe that national security is vital right now for our country on so many fronts. I could continue to discuss many others.
And the FBI's role in that?
And the FBI plays a vital role in counterterrorism
which you will or will not shut down.
I will look at each agency. I have no intention of shutting anything down right now, Senator. I am not in that office yet, and if confirmed, I will look at each individual agency and how it should be managed, but counterterrorism right now in our world is vital.
You have said that Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted in the Trump administration. What Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted and why?
I said that on TV. I said prosecutors will be prosecuted to finish the quote, if bad. Investigators will be investigated. You know, we all take an oath, Senator, to uphold the law. None of us are above the law. Let me give you a really good example of a bad lawyer within the Justice Department, a guy named Klein Smith, who altered a FISA warrant, one of the most important things we can do in this country. So will everyone be held to an equal, fair system of justice if I am the next Attorney General? Absolutely. And no one is above the law.
Under what circumstances will you prosecute journalists for what they write?
I believe in the freedom of speech. Only if anyone commits a crime. It's pretty basic, Senator, with anything, with any victim. And this goes back to my entire career for 18 years as a prosecutor and then 8 years as Florida's Attorney General. You find the facts of the case, you apply the law in good faith, and you treat everyone fairly.
And it would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name, correct?
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016. They targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him. That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country. Senator, we've got to bring this country back together. We've got to move forward, or we're going to lose our country.
Yeah, I think the concern.
Her answer came quickly, no, never, not in the courtroom and not in Tallahassee, but Whitehouse's question was not asked in a vacuum. He was invoking a shadow that hung over her candidacy, the association with Kash Patel, who had once been accused of boasting on television about maintaining such a list. Bondi defended him, citing his record of jury trials, his work in defense and intelligence, and his courtroom experience. Yet Whitehouse pushed further, demanding to know if she would ever enforce such a practice at the Justice Department. Bondi leaned forward and answered firmly that she would not, that under her leadership no such list would exist. The assurance sounded absolute, but the tension in the room was impossible to ignore. What came next only deepened the divide. Whitehouse pivoted to the FBI's counterterrorism role, an area where political allies had floated the idea of limiting the Bureau's power or even dismantling aspects of its operations. He asked directly whether she would consider shutting down counterterrorism programs. Bondi, aware of the stakes, acknowledged the grave threats facing the nation, speaking of rising global tensions, of the risks posed by foreign adversaries, of sleeper cells that had been discussed in intelligence circles. She insisted the FBI's work in counterterrorism was vital, and said she had no intention of shutting anything down, though she added that every agency should be reviewed carefully if she were confirmed. To critics that sounded like hedging, to supporters it was cautious pragmatism. The back and forth set the stage for the hearing's most explosive moment. Whitehouse pulled out one of Bondi's own prior statements, a remark from a television appearance in which she declared, "Prosecutors will be prosecuted." It was a phrase that set off alarms about her view of justice and the possibility of politically driven retribution. Bondi attempted to clarify, saying she meant only that misconduct should not be tolerated, that no official was above the law. She cited the case of Kevin Kleinsmith, a lawyer who altered a surveillance document, as the kind of wrongdoing that demanded accountability. Her refrain was that justice must be applied evenly. Still, the phrase lingered in the air like smoke, raising doubts about how she might wield authority if confirmed. Whitehouse was not finished. He turned to the press, asking whether Bondi would prosecute journalists for their reporting. It was a sensitive subject, given past clashes between officials and the media. Bondi insisted she believed in freedom of speech, that only if a crime was committed would prosecution be appropriate. She explained that prosecutors should begin with facts and crimes, not with individuals and vendettas. She pointed to her 18 years as a prosecutor and 8 years as Attorney General as proof of her commitment to fairness. Yet again the undertones sparked unease. Critics worried her words left enough room for broad interpretations, while her defenders heard a firm commitment to accountability grounded in law. At this point the hearing shifted toward broader themes. Bondi argued that the Department of Justice had been politicized for years, targeted investigations aimed at undermining certain political figures, a pattern she pledged would end if she were in charge. She promised not to politicize the office, not to target people for their affiliations, to restore balance and fairness. The framing was deliberate, casting herself as the candidate of integrity. But to some senators, it sounded less like independence and more like a subtle embrace of narratives that had fueled division for years. Whitehouse, seeing the risks ahead, brought up the contacts policy, a long-standing safeguard designed to limit communication between the White House and the Department of Justice to a very small circle of senior officials. He reminded Bondi that the policy was instituted to prevent political meddling. Would she uphold it? Bondi responded with a clear yes. She promised to meet only with White House counsel and the appropriate officials, to enforce the policy, and to protect the department's independence. The exchange seemed reassuring, but the lingering doubts remained. By the end of the hearing, the political implications of her testimony were unmistakable. Democrats saw evasions, moments where she avoided directly breaking from partisan narratives, and they worried she would not truly act as an independent attorney general. They heard her acknowledgement of politicization claims and her defense of controversial allies as signs she might prioritize loyalty over independence. Republicans, however, saw validation. They heard her stress on fairness, her firm demeanor, and her willingness to echo grievances that resonated with their base. For them she was both strong and balanced, a law and order figure who could reassure allies while still presenting herself as calm enough to win confirmation. The hearing became less about individual questions and more about the broader vision she represented. Would justice remain blind, or would it be guided by political weight? Her testimony contained contradictions that spoke louder than her promises. She pledged to safeguard freedom of speech, but avoided fully rejecting the idea of prosecuting reporters if crimes were alleged. She vowed to protect the FBI's counterterrorism mission, but left the door open to reviewing every agency. She promised independence from political influence, but framed her candidacy within the language of grievances about weaponization. Supporters called it strength. Opponents called it hedging. What remained clear was that the stakes were enormous. The role of Attorney General is not abstract, it is the line between law as principle and law as political tool. Senators in that chamber understood the magnitude of the choice before them. Bondi's calm, deliberate tone gave her an air of credibility, but her alignment with long-standing grievances raised fresh fears about how she would act in moments of political pressure. For Democrats, her words signaled danger, a warning that the Justice Department's independence could again be at risk. For Republicans, they reinforced trust that she would carry their banner under the mantle of fairness. For the American people, watching from outside those walls, the hearing was a reminder that beneath promises of integrity lies a struggle over one of the nation's most important institutions. The clash was not just about one nominee, it was about the direction of justice itself, about whether the system would be preserved as a shield for democracy or reshaped into a tool for partisan wars. Bondi insisted she would be fair, that she would never keep an enemies list, never shut down essential national security work, never politicize prosecutions, but woven into her testimony were echoes of loyalty to narratives that had already divided the country. That duality left one question hanging in the air long after the gavel fell: was she offering true independence, or simply cloaking partisanship in the language of law and order? The answer may decide not only her confirmation but also the course of justice in America for years to come.